Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. I'm here today with Monica Maria Aparicio. She's a master healer, business mentor, and the founder of the Psychology of Prosperity. And we're going to talk about the psychology of prosperity today. I'm so curious. Welcome so much for coming.
Thank you, Renee. Hello, everyone. So I guess I'll start by saying that I love to study etymology, and I find that it's a really good way to really understand the world, because sometimes we tend to use words and we don't even know what we're saying.
Actually,
Which,
define what etymology is, because not everybody's going to know what
okay.
that
So the
word is.
study of words, the origin and the study of the origin and roots of words, like what words actually mean.
Right.
Yeah, the big word nerd. That's what I say. So this seemed to have just dropped in as I guess I'm going to call it a download, just a divine download, a realization, an expansion of consciousness around what it actually takes to succeed. And it was just this year, as I was once again pivoting, reinventing myself after moving from New York to Colombia, putting my business on hold, going through a lot of another layer of spiritual healing, because there's many layers, many layers. We really are like the onion. And what I realized is that most people don't really have an understanding of themselves fully. And part of it has to do with the way that words are used. So there is a common, I guess, notion that as humans, we only use 10% of our brain's capacity. So I don't know if you've heard that, but it's definitely.
I don't think it's true, but that's.
I don't think it's true either. But what I do find interesting is that the word psychology, if you ask most people, what does psychology mean? They'll tell you, oh, well, it's the study of your mind and your behaviors. And yeah, like what are your motives for your behavior, your emotions? But the word actually comes from the root of psyche, which doesn't mean mind, it means soul. Right, you know that because your YouTube channel is spirit psychology. When I saw that, I was like, oh, we're so aligned. And so I thought, well, what does it really take to succeed? And what it takes is to really study your soul, to really understand yourself and who you really are, what you're really capable of. And it's not just through, it's beyond mindset work, which I think is very popular, especially for anyone who's in business, entrepreneurship. It's beyond that. It's really full faith and trust in who you are. And also beyond succeeding, it's really thriving. So it's just a constant evolutionary process of looking within and seeing what do you need to be well. And, the word wealth actually comes from the word well-being. And well-being, when you're fully well, it's because you have come back into your own awareness of being whole, your wholeness. So your wealth comes from your wholeness. And that's really what the psychology of prosperity is all about.
So I am also a word nerd, and
Yeah.
and the word success is a really potent one. And the idea of success on a soul level and
Mm-hmm.
examining what that really means to any of us, I think is very important, because when we use the words prosperity and success, we will tend to think about money and
Yeah.
business success, and prosperity meaning we have a big bank account and lots of material goods in our life. But on a soul level, success and prosperity can mean something very different. They really are about the fullness and the fulfillment and the joy that we feel within ourselves, in our relationships, in our own, bringing our gifts into the world, being of service to others, feeling like we're a part of this system in a meaningful way that is way beyond any of the material things that we might acquire, which can then be taken from us or burn or be stolen or whatever they are. Because on a soul level, we bring the real prosperity and fulfillment and success that we have with us
Yeah.
into perhaps the netherworld or the next lifetimes or whatever you believe happens after we die. So
yeah, and I'm sure you have a lot of clients that maybe they're doing fairly well for themselves. Like maybe they have a job that pays really well, but they don't find that there's any meaning in what they're doing. And they're spending 8, 9, 10 hours of their day dedicated to something that has no meaning, that doesn't really fulfill their purpose. And there's like a disconnection to self. Or people that do have that, but it's at the cost of their wealth, their physical well-being, or their relationships, because they're not taking the time to spend with their loved ones. They're just busy working. So yeah.
So how do you talk to people about prosperity and success?
So when, let's see, in 2010, I was working as a teacher in the Department of Education in New York City. I was a high school art teacher and photography teacher. And I knew when I became a teacher that I wasn't going to retire as a teacher. It was just something that I've always allowed myself to just kind of follow whatever I felt passionate about at the moment. So I'd kind of like run its course around 2007. And I was like, I went through a lot of changes myself. I became sober. There were a lot of, the school culture after work, Fridays, it was like, okay, we're going to go to the bar. So many things were off for me. It weren't aligned anymore with my lifestyle and who I was becoming. And so walking into the school building was very jarring. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm walking into a battlefield. I mean, the screaming teenagers plus the bureaucracy of the adults. And so I was just kind of like searching around, like, okay, what am I going to do? And in my search, I found a woman who was doing some kind of business related, like how to start your own business type of workshop. And she introduced me to another woman who I guess was a mentor of hers. And they were talking about wealth consciousness. And I thought, what is that? I had never heard of that. And I started studying wealth consciousness in 2010 as a result. And what I realized is that it's actually such a profound spiritual journey of realizing yourself, of really understanding that wealth and spirituality are synonymous. They're the same thing. But we have been taught that it's not spiritual to be wealthy. I think some of that has kind of, it has evolved because there are so many spiritual entrepreneurs kind of selling the idea that you can make so much money. And so a little bit has gone away, but I think for the general public, it still feels very separate. And people feel like, okay, well, making money is over here and being spiritual is over there. And it's really about like merging the two and understanding, well, how can you fully realize yourself? And wealth can be different, it can be a different thing to different people. Like I'm sure your idea of what wealthy is or how you would feel wealthy is different from what I think. So it's really about like giving yourself the permission to go deep and kind of understanding, well, if I can see a vision, if I desire something, then it's meant to be. Like the potential for it to be is there and you deserve it. That like it doesn't make you bad in wanting to have more, because it's when you have more, you can actually do more. You can do more good in the world.
Sometimes. It depends.
Sometimes, yes.
I do want to notice this is, we've just met. And so I like to not pre-talk too much to people because you discover things. So I was also an art teacher for 13 years.
Oh.
And I've been sober for 35 years.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Noticing that is interesting. Nice little correlation. And I think historically, one of the reasons that poverty and celibacy were part of a lot of particularly monastic traditions is because sex and money, romance and finance can be really, really distracting. And they can actually become gods themselves, that we look for fulfillment from money or from a relationship that actually needs to come spiritually from the larger system, from source, or from God. And so that confusion, that challenge, I think that is our challenge in the modern time, is to blend the metaphysical and the physical, the material and the transpersonal. And, you know, for me, when the idea of wealth, and my partner and I talk about this a lot, is something that's present right now. I'm already wealthy. I already have prosperity in my life. I already have flow in my life, and opening to receive. And for me, it's not just about receiving, it's about the flow of the inflow and the outflow, and to be able to grow the skills and abilities, the muscles, even to be able to hold that so that I can be of greater service to others and myself, rather than just accruing, which can actually be rooted in fear. I mean, there's people, once people, you know, people that become like billionaires, or, you know, there's never enough, because it's not, you know, as an addict, having tried to fill that God-sized hole with all kinds of things in my life, that can easily translate into money and relationships. And so claiming the wealth and the connection that I have now really opens that up, rather than trying to, like, I didn't drink alcohol because I was thirsty, right? And I don't. And so anyway, I'm curious what you think about that.
I think that there's a lot of occult wisdom that has just been hidden from us, and that's what occult means. It just means hidden. That if we had access to since our, you know, since birth, since if our parents had access to this, that it would make sense for us to understand that there isn't any lack, because we're part of nature. And there's one thing that I have learned can really teach you abundance. It's just sitting in nature, you know, like putting your feet in the sand, seeing that there's countless grains of sand, looking up at the stars. You can't even try to count them. There's so many. Whatever it is, if you're tapped into nature, it's an overflow always. And so when you speak of realizing that you are already wealthy, it's understanding, well, I am part of this existence that always provides beyond what I need. I once had a mentor. I went to a conference, and I remember he said something that really struck me, and it was, everyone has the same access to the same amount of money. It's just not everyone is aware of it. It's like you have access to money and to the same money, to the same abundance. You're just not aware of it. And I think this just goes back to, again, understanding natural law, you know, universal law, which again, it's occult wisdom, and it's basic understanding of how the universe operates. You know, the first law being everything is mind. So if you're thinking about it, the thought form is creating its physical form. It's a process. It takes a little bit of, we don't instantly think and then produce, at least not on this plane. So yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people just, you know, to them, this will sound like crazy talk, but it's just basic information that we haven't been taught. So it sounds crazy.
Well, I don't know if it sounds crazy. I mean, I certainly believe we create our reality. I mean, that's the basis of my spiritual psychology work, although I don't usually say that directly.
Yeah.
And the thing that's fascinating for me is that I look at it more like psyche rather than just mind, because mind, we often just think about our intellectual thoughts, and that's only one aspect of the many ways that we hold or project into the world. There's a felt experience, there's a body held experience, I just did a workshop on ancestral healing. We have, you know, our intergenerational beliefs. And a lot of times, like, I see this particularly in relationships. People will say, I want to have a relationship, but they don't have a relationship. That's not a coincidence, right? If you really, really want something and you're really open to receiving it, it will come. You will create it. Absolutely. That's been my experience. But often unconsciously, below the level of our awareness, there's conflict. And that's where things get kept away, even though, like, we're in a place of wanting rather than a place of claiming or receiving. And that's,
Mhm.
I mean, in the prosperity practice that I do, it's about actually claiming it now, feeling the feelings. Particularly, my understanding is that the universe actually speaks in the language of resonance and energy, and feelings are probably even stronger than thoughts around things like that. And so, you know, I did this earlier this year of I'm really working on my own money, and particularly becoming more conscious around it. I fine with money, but I have a vagueness that can be problematic from time to time. I need to get better structures in place. I didn't get those. I missed that day at school when they told you how to do all that stuff, I guess. But anyway, so I've been feeling the feelings of what it's like to have this flow. I don't really want to accrue money, but I need enough flow. I live bi-coastally to be able to do all the things that I want to do. I'm expanding my work, and just really feeling abundance and how that feels, not wanting it, because then I'm actually claiming wanting, and I'm in that wanting and not having feeling. And so I spent a couple days just thinking and sitting in meditation around feeling what it felt like to have this abundance. And I had $25,000 come in over the next 6 weeks. There you go.
Yep, that's how it definitely works. There's a great exercise that anybody listening can do, and it's pretty fun, especially if you have maybe a specific project that you need some, or just an intention that you're needing some money around for. Just take out a piece of paper and you can write out 50 ways to afford anything right now. And you number it 1 to 50, and you sit down and you just keep thinking of ideas. Now, it's not about selling anything you have currently or exchanging, but creation. So this really does allow you to tap into abilities that maybe you had put away in a closet, or, you know, had it used for a while, or something that you're good at and passionate about, but you never thought about charging for. And this was taught to me again by another mentor that I had. And the key to it is you don't get up until you complete the 50. Even if you feel like you're stumped, you don't take a pause. You just keep going straight through. And what you're going to find is that you start to tap into, again, the universal mind, right? Because we are one. And so back to natural law, all is mind, and really connecting in with inspiration that starts to come through. And inspiration meaning like life is breathing through you. That's what it like to inspire means, to be breathed through. And it's such a fun activity. And you'll find that maybe you'll even get surprised, like, oh, I never thought about that. I've done this exercise a few times, and I've always walked away with really great ideas, business ideas. And I really recommend it. I recommend it to all my clients. So it's a fun exercise to do.
That's so fun. Have you pursued any of those ideas from that list of 50?
Yeah, I definitely have. And, you know, they've turned into programs, they've turned into just ways that I never thought I would create money, and just like additional revenue streams. So yeah,
You know,
it's fun.
I did a YouTube recently on automatic writing as a source for people to channel, and inspiration is channeling. It's just a different word. I don't always love the word channeling because it has lots of different applications, different people, but that's definitely how I work myself, is to sit. My prayer and meditation time always includes a journal, because I feel like I open the door to higher consciousness or higher wisdom, and ask for it to whisper to me or come through my pen, and get lots and different ideas. And everybody has that possibility and that capacity, right? If we just are willing to sit down and take the time to do it, and to be open. And I wonder, though, if that might even be scary for some people, though. I find doing new things can be challenging, and people like the idea of it, but then they don't actually do it. And it's the doing is where the magic happens, I think.
Yes, part of it. I think also though, more so than recently, and even for myself, like last night I made it a point to just put the phone away and I took out a book. And I remember I used to have a stack of books next to my nightstand, and then just over the years, so much more video content is out and audiobooks, and I think that a lot of people have gotten away from like reading and writing. And it's so important because even like typing something out on your phone or your computer isn't, you're not getting the hand and eye coordination that's really important for your brain to be engaged in the process. And so that's why I always say take out a piece of paper and a pen and just do old school writing. So I think maybe some people are scared, and I think also some people have just become used to the way of the world today and just habits of constantly being connected to devices. Like I just feel like I want to throw social media away. I finally have just, I've had enough. I feel that it really is so distracting, and it's more like people scroll endlessly to, I think it's a way of numbing. And I know that there was an article I read about what happens in the brain when, for example, somebody likes your picture, or there's some kind of interaction on social media, that it's very similar to the synapses in the brain when there's a dependency on something. You know, it is an addiction of sorts. And I really think that a lot of the world is kind of dealing with this because it's just kind of like what we've been, I don't know, accustomed to at this point. I was even thinking about, I was having a conversation with mastermind that I'm a part of, and I said, you know, when I started business, there was no social media. I feel like there's such a dependency on like Facebook and Instagram, and even for people who aren't in business, again, like that's such a part of your life. You know, like how many websites do we connect to just through Facebook? So I feel like we just need to disconnect more from these devices and connect back more in with just simplicity, nature, journaling, just walks by ourselves, silence, like just kind of like quieting the mind. And then maybe you'll feel the desire. Hey, I'm gonna sit down and write something. I'm gonna think about what I want and put it on paper.
Well, it's a difference in flow, because a lot of us have been acculturated to be consumers.
Yeah.
And when we're writing, we're actually producing or creating. It's
Yeah.
an outflow rather than an inflow. So we have a lot of inflow.
Yes.
Not a lot of outflow. In fact, the way that the inflow happens, and because there's so many gifted and talented people, and you know, the way that videos are done, they're really beautiful. So people feel inadequate with their own creation compared to the consuming that they're doing. But I want to notice also that writing, and I always have a pen and paper around, is connected with our heart chakra. Like it's in between our voice and our heart chakra, right? If people are familiar with the chakra system. So this is like our self-expression in the world. And our heart, of course, is how we exchange love and goodwill. And it's very connected to our soul, right? And our arm is kind of like right in between those two, right? So that's the difference, like you said, between typing, although certainly, you know, typing is better than nothing. But when we're actually writing, I find for myself, there's access to deeper wisdom and voices and creativity in myself. It is like opening a door when I'm writing that connects to my soul and my deeper self.
I actually just pulled out a little notebook and a pen, and I put it next to the pillow. And I thought, okay, as soon as I wake up, and I've heard this from many people, I'm actually reading Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, I think it's called. I don't know if you know who Rick Rubin is. Really incredible book. I believe he's A&R to many. He's very, very well known in the music industry, and really juicy guidance for creatives and artists, or anybody that wants to tap into their creativity. And I just happened to open the page yesterday, just to a random page to read, and it said, you know, before you go to sleep, just tell yourself you're going to remember what you dream of. And
Mm.
when you open your eyes, before you do any abrupt movements, like barely just like grab the, your notebook and paper and pen and just start writing to remember. And so that's something I'm going to start to come back to. And I feel that it's so easy to disconnect, even if you are someone who is spiritual, or if you're like us, spiritual teachers, guides for others. At any point, we can disconnect because we live in a society that is like that. Like you said, we're so conditioned to consume rather than output and create. So I don't know. That's something I'm trying, and I think it might help me getting back into journaling, because I haven't journaled in a while.
Well, it's an excellent intention, and the dreaming piece is really interesting. I've done a lot of dream study at different times, and that is one of the first things they'll do. And it really speaks to the power of intention. This idea of suggesting something to ourselves on a regular basis, and it can be super simple. It's how I quit smoking cigarettes, actually. But the dream thing is, yeah, just suggest to yourself, I'm going to remember my dreams and have a place to write them down, and it works. It may take a little bit of time. You got to be patient. Sometimes the deeper mind needs a little bit of help. That is how I stopped smoking cigarettes, though. I actually prayed about it every day. I didn't even do it consciously, like for a lot, but I knew I needed to quit smoking because cancer was in my family and I was coughing up terrible things. But I loved smoking. I loved smoking cigarettes, and I didn't really want to quit. So I started to just ask for the willingness to quit. And it took months, actually. Every once in a while I'd say, just please give me the willingness to quit whatever I'm asking. And then one day I ran out of cigarettes. This was before vapes and all that. I ran out of cigarettes, and I thought, I'm going to not smoke tomorrow, maybe. And that was 31 years ago.
Wow, that's such a great feat. I think that word willingness is key, because if there's a will, then the way will find you'll find it. It'll come to you. If you can say something that you want something, but if the will isn't there, nothing's going to really happen. You have to be open and willing, for sure.
Yes, I think that's the extra piece. I mean, that's like when I was talking about relationships, is like, I have a girlfriend who has been struggling for a long time. She says she wants a relationship, but she keeps dating all these totally inadequate men. And the last guy, she said, oh, he really hurt me, he screwed me over. And I had to say, I saw that whole thing go down.
The beginning.
And I'm not sure that that's true. Like, and she said, well, I knew it really wouldn't work out in the long run anyway. And so she was investing in this thing, and there's this cycle of telling herself she gets screwed over, and really she's investing in things that she doesn't really want. And then, as we've talked about it, she said, I actually feel like I'm supposed to have a relationship. I'm kind of happy by myself. I kind of like living alone, and I'm not sure I even really want that. So that's that inner conflict of like, what we want, but do we really have the willingness to receive it into our life? I think that's the work.
Yes. And the more that we study the psyche, the more that we study our soul, and I love that you brought up the ancestral healing component of it, because we are literally extensions of our ancestors, not only biologically, but also we inherit everything that they experienced. And the science is called epigenetics, for anybody that hasn't heard of it. I don't know if you have, but it's not a new science. In the last, I think maybe like, I'm going to say since like, I don't know, I'm going to ballpark 6 years.
It's about 15 years. I just did a YouTube on epigenetics last week.
Oh, okay. But like I heard about it in 2017, 2018. And I know that's, now as they've already been studying it, and so now they start putting things out in the public, but we're inheriting all of the trauma experience.
I want to interrupt that. We don't inherit all of it. Just like, so we just did a genetic testing with my kids, And it's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. So my kid's father is part Armenian, and my kids and I come from Canadian, French Canadian, Irish, and my kids have completely different genetic material. My son has Ashkenazi Jew. My daughter does not. My daughter is almost all Northern European, and he has all this Middle Eastern, really, really different genetics from exactly the same parents. And so I just want to, it's a very interesting thing because we don't inherit all of it. We
So,
inherit some of it.
yeah.
And it's very spotty what we get. That's why, like, my kids are completely different in personality, in psyche, in soul, in attitude. They look similar, but their
Yeah.
inner experience and what they've received ancestrally is really, it's, I mean, you can see it in their physical genes, but the gene expression, which is really what epigenetics is about as well, is how the genes are expressed. I think, I just to say that to people, because I think if I think I received all of everybody's trauma, oh my God, like, and I know I didn't get all of it.
I didn't finish the sentence. I was going to say we inherit all of the trauma and the crises and the just general experience with the interaction and experience with the environment that was impactful to our ancestors, and they didn't get a chance to process and integrate. That does energetically pass through. It's not biology, it's energetic.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not something you're going to see physically. And the clue to understanding what it was is by starting to look at the patterns that you're currently experiencing in your life, like your girlfriend and her experience of dating the wrong person, and then kind of contradicting what her actual desire is because she's choosing something else rather than what she wants. So there's a pattern that she's experiencing there that it's like she's kind of aware of it, but she's not aware of it. And it's not, there's a saying like, oh, she's unlucky in love, or he's unlucky in love, but it doesn't have anything to do with luck. It's just understanding, like, where does that really come from? One of the things that helped me heal, because I've had a lot of issues with my lungs, and I guess, not very good, much luck in relationships, luck in quotation marks. And one day I just said, I'm going to ask my mom about the health of the women in our family, particularly around the maternal line, because the maternal genes are so strong, especially for women, because of the amount of actual eggs living in the ovaries, and the fact that we were inside of our grandmothers. Because we're born with all the ovaries that we're going to have in a lifetime, right? So our mothers were born with those ovaries, and our grandmothers were born with those ovaries where our mother was. So I asked my mom, tell me about the health of the women in our family. As it turns out, almost all of them had asthma. And when I asked her, tell me about did they have relationships? Were they married? A lot of them were, and they were very abusive and difficult marriages. And so that opened up in my consciousness that there was something I inherited around my well-being, the asthma being issues with the lungs, which hold grief.
Yeah.
If we look and not
my mother died of emphysema.
Yeah, like the lungs are literally, they look like shields, a shield in front of the heart. So it absorbs all the grief. And so it just made so much sense to me. And it's sometimes because the lack of a consciousness and awareness is what prolongs the illness and the unhappy situation that we don't want to have in our lives.
So it's interesting to talk about this on a soul level, though. Which is that, my belief? It's more that it's such common lore in the wisdom teachings that I follow that it seems like it must be true. That on some level, on a soul level, we are drawn to the circumstances of our birth. And that whether there's lessons we need to learn, or whether it's just we're drawn to it like a lock and a key because of our own function and dysfunction. And that's, it's often called karma, right? Which is this drawing. And I think for me, it's been really important to consider that I have some level of, I guess, responsibility for my life circumstances on a soul level, not on a personality level. No one wants to be neglected or abused or like I didn't, but on a deeper level, the circumstances of my birth, both culturally and familially, and even just my own genetic and physical makeup, are not coincidental when I look at them within myself. Like they are absolutely set up to help me to grow and evolve and challenge me in the ways that I need to be challenged to be able to grow more in that unified consciousness and in prosperity. Even if it seems backwards, like the lessons might seem backwards, but those are the challenges for me to grow the muscles to overcome, or that direct me, like the dysfunction in my family. Actually, I wouldn't be a therapist if it wasn't for that. So here we are, right? And I did my life's calling.
Yeah. I think that some of the most powerful healers and guides have been people who have walked through a lot of darkness. And in order to actually hold the capacity for light, you do need to understand its opposite.
Mhm.
And really darkness just meaning a lack of consciousness, like lack of awareness. And I find it to be really fascinating and interesting. And I think it's just been one, definitely the desire to be well and to be able to help other people be well as well, that had me searching and discovering, well, how can I address this issue, right? And again, we go back to the topic of willingness, like that there was a will to want to change the circumstance. That's one thing. The other thing is also the tools that I've used to be able to get to this understanding. And there's so many tools. And one of the, I think at the end of the day, everything comes down to energy, right? Everything is spirit, which is it's energetic, the combination of the unseen and the seen. It's just the spiritual essence of things. And for me, breath work was one thing that really helped me to just literally like wake myself up from the unwillingness, from the state of maybe numbing, being asleep, kind of like zombieing through life, like not wanting to look at things. And plant medicine was the other one that helped me to really understand, like, okay, that ancestral connection of knowing how to connect the dots of like, where did this actually come from? Like, what was like the energetic imprint that kind of set this pattern in place that I'm still living today, that I'm done. I've already learned everything I can learn from it. It's time to change it. So yeah, I think that, and I don't know which, I know you've mentioned some of you've been in this field for a long time. So you've mentioned chakras, you do psychotherapy, and I think, I wonder,
Actually,
like,
I don't do psychotherapy.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I don't, they would get mad actually if I said, I got in trouble actually once because someone said that. Don't worry, I won't get in trouble right now.
Okay.
No, it's my work is a blend of shamanism and hypnotherapy and Buddhist philosophy. And it sits on a grounding of Western psychology because I think it's really important to understand the psychology that's part of the psyche. But I don't do plant medicine because I don't do anything mood or mind altering, just for myself. But I've been a shamanic practitioner for many decades. And shamanism is a portal very much like plant medicine to just the shamanic journey itself without any psychedelics, is an incredibly direct portal to be able to connect with the larger system and the metaphysical and the transpersonal very, very directly. And so that's been my practice. That's been really transformative for me. That and mystical Christianity, actually.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, I'm glad that you shared, because I was going to ask you, like, what are some of your favorite tools? And I also, just because there are so many tools, and I think it's a very personal journey on discovering what is it that really resonates with you, what really allows you to understand yourself better, what just makes sense for you. Because again, there's so many different roads that will lead you to that understanding of self, which ultimately I think is what we want, is to really know who are we so that we can really value ourselves. And I actually had a thought this weekend, because I sit in ceremony every Saturday around, well, what do we need in the world right now? And it just came down to self-love. You know, if we all loved ourselves fully, then we would always make the best choice for ourselves in any situation.
So I take a little bit of a different perspective because I'm very informed by 12-step and also these other, whatever my other practices are. So for me, it is more about selflessness. Now we have to have a self that we care for in order to get to selflessness to some extent. But the idea, I think my own perspective is that the self-centeredness of modern life has actually separated us. And, you know, I was talking to a client yesterday who was talking about self-love, and self-love actually directly in itself has never worked for me, because it feels like it's something that has to be generated. I'm in this independent place, and being independent actually became quite toxic for me because I thought I wasn't supposed to need anybody else. And really, for me, the greatest truth is we aren't an individual. And the idea of individuality is a fallacy, that we are actually part of a system. And you can't, just like my heart, the organs in my body, like my heart and my lungs and my digestion, they're part of a system. If I take my heart out, it's just a lump of meat. If you remove me from the larger system, I'm nothing, because I am part of nature with my breath and the food that I eat, and I'm part of a society and a culture, no matter how I participate or don't participate in it. So for me, it has become about service, and I have to care for my own self in order to be of service. But I think self-love can become self-centered, and we have way too much self. And it's really when I open to participating in this larger system, that I discover that that I am a part of something that really cares for me. It's paying attention to me. I'm important. I'm not everything, but the different tools and paths you were talking about, for me, they all lead up the same mountain. They might be a different pathway, and you can ride a bike, you can hike, you might take a bus or a helicopter, but it's going to get us to the same place, which is that we are all tiny aspects of God or unified consciousness. We aren't all of it, but we're parts of it. And when we connect and experience that, whatever pathway, and we all have them. So just even the willingness to connect.
Yes.
And then, like you said, after that thing, you were dissatisfied with your work, and then like you discovered this and you discovered that, and these people came into your life. Like, that's not a coincidence.
Right.
Those are in the different pathways, like our own soul's journey, when we can open to that deeper willingness to go with the flow. And there is a flow for each of us, and let go of our kind of patterned ways of distracting and being, and tap into that flow. We'll be brought sometimes quite quickly right to the path that will bring us to our soul's fulfillment.
Yeah. There's a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know if you've seen it.
That movie. Yes.
It's a really good movie. I find it interesting how there's so many similarities between you and I, and of course, a different perspective. And it makes me think of another universal law, as within, so without. And it really is just about our perspective and intention, and the way that we see things, and how we choose to go about our journey. And that it's such a personal thing. And it really is just how you feel pulled, like what's actually pulling you.
Yes.
If you know that your intention is, yes, I'm willing, I'm ready, I'm open, I want to love myself, and I want to be of service to the world. I want to understand what is life.
That's the best place.
Yes.
That's the best place. That's like magic to come out of the external expectations of how we think we should be,
Yeah.
and to be willing to tap in, open to tapping into how we really are. And that's the magic, is our true self, our soul self, not necessarily our idealized ego image or what mom wants me to be or what I think my boyfriend wants me to look like, but what's really wants to come from me. That's the path.
Yeah. I love it.
So what can we give, what else can we give people to do if they want to open up
Well,
their path?
so I have a free 5-day experience. It's called the Breath of Wealth. And every day I guide you through an exercise and also through a breath sequence that I developed using energy healing, using visualization, and obviously using the breath to open up into a higher awareness of what you actually want and how you can start to get it. So it's free, and I'm happy to share it with your audience.
Awesome. And I'm going to do it too.
Yeah,
I actually I have very healthy lungs. I did not inherit that from my mother, but it is an interesting thing when we look at the body, mind, spirit continuum, coming to deeper. My mother's been dead for a very long time, but coming to deeper understanding. And I've become interested in the lungs. It's not a body part that we focus on a lot in Western psyche. It's focused on in Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
So, and the breath is how we are receiving and exchanging every moment, right? That's our most present connection with the larger system.
Breath is life, and it's a great tool because you don't need to buy anything. Like, it's literally under your nose. You can access it at any time. It's free, and there's an unlimited amount of oxygen for you to breathe.
There is.
Mm-hmm.
I will look forward to doing that. I'm going on a little vacation for a couple days, and I'd love to have little practices. So I'll be sure to download it myself.
Awesome.
Monica Maria, so great to connect with you. And it's interesting. We ended up talking all around all these different things, not so much about wealth, but those are all the things that make us wealthy, right?
Well-being is wealth.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining, and blessings on your work.
Thank you. Likewise. We'll talk soon.
Bye now.
Bye.